Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to move on to chapter 3 of the book of Daniel. Part of a series where we're going through the entire book of Daniel. I have a playlist called the book of Daniel where you can find the other videos, along with many other videos that I've done not part of this series about the book of Daniel. So make sure to give that a look. So this chapter has to do with this story right here, being thrown into the furnace. And let's just go ahead and, well, before we get into it, here's the update on the Flood the Earth challenge, or the Sharing of the Book of Mormon challenge. 5,746 copies of the Book of Mormon shared as of right now. And 558 people that have joined this challenge. Please make this number go up. If you're listening, there are thousands of you. I know there's thousands of you watching these videos. Please do it. It's not for anybody's glory. It's just to help people want to share the Book of Mormon, whereas they may not have wanted to otherwise, by being part of a challenge and seeing how far this thing can go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. Chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar creates a golden image and commands all men to worship it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refuse and are cast into the fiery furnace. They are preserved and come out unharmed. One thing that I don't get is that this is commonly how we know these three men by these names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but those are their Babylonian names. I don't know why we don't just call them by their true Hebrew names, but whatever. If you have an answer for that, feel free to put that in the comments below. But anyway, and you'll remember, they, along with Daniel, were brought to Babylon either because they had great wisdom, knowledge, they were good at science. So these are three people like Daniel that had something to bring to the table, something that was valuable to the Babylonians. Okay, and we actually meet them in chapter 1. That's where they're first mentioned. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits, and he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. I decided just now to stop the video and go look on Wikicommons to see if anyone had tried to depict this before, and it looks like somebody did. On Wikicommons, you have this Italian Venice, the Adoration of the statue of Nebuchadnezzar in the Isabella, Stewart, Gardner Museum. And so it's this right here. Here it is a little bit bigger, which I don't necessarily think that this is historically accurate. It's probably, a Renaissance painter's vision, trying to figure out what those people would have looked like, not having any knowledge of what the Babylonians look like. I doubt that they look like this, but whatever. Here's an interesting depiction of it in the statue right there in the back. Very interesting. You have horns blowing. All right. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, and the captains, and the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then an herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up. So that's the problem right there, worship. I'm sure that if it had just been like a commemorative type statue to commemorate his kingship, maybe the Jews would have gone to attend. And okay, all right, we're there's this new dedication of this new statue. But this, I think, is the sticking point. Worshipping the golden image. That's really bad. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, All the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Now, really quick, I want to point out, you remember that Daniel and the book of Revelation are essentially companion books. Revelation is kind of the sequel to Daniel. And we have this same problem going on in the last days as described in the book of Revelation, where you have all these people. It may not be an actual golden statue that's being worshipped, but you do have organizations, you have philosophies, in some cases, maybe you do have certain monuments, things like that, worldly things that belong to the world, to what you might call the beast system that everybody gives reverence to and participates in. Um, Sometimes it's just how you conduct your own life, adopting a Babylonian lifestyle with comforts, pleasures, more so than you do uh, than the things of God, and they become idols to you. Which again, by all accounts, I am a capitalist. I think that you should try and improve your situation, but you don't want to cross that line where that's like the sole purpose of your life is to compete against other people, to keep up with the Joneses, to show just how successful you've become in this world. And some people do that. Some people want slash need that status because of a maladaptive lifestyle and life strategy that they've chosen for themselves. Some people are just pleasure seekers, right? But, and now, probably more than any other time in world history, well, I can't say that, but right now, things are like really bad as far as like everybody, we've talked about this many times, everybody seemingly in lockstep with each other, with messaging. You know, everything is affected right now. Everyone has to conform to the narratives, philosophies, politics, issues that are being pushed right now. And there's a lot of people going along with this as we speak, doing this. This is what you are doing as you go along with things that you know are not right, that society is pushing. This is what you're doing right here. Some people think that there's going to be a one person antichrist, and that's what the book of Revelation is talking about. And I'm here to tell you it's not. It's not a single person antichrist. That's never been taught in our church. It's not part of our doctrine. I've done so much research into it. It's something that's imported from other Christian churches based on their misunderstanding of key scriptures that have to do with the great apostasy and Satan himself. However, in our church, we do have the concept of a great and abominable church, which is essentially this right here in what I was just describing. And there are many antichrists, and unfortunately, there's many people that decide to go along with it, and it's horrible. Okay. Wherefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. And they spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now, if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace? And who is that God that shall deliver you out of mine hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. Now, this is kind of interesting because I feel like there's a little bit of a parallel here with the last days, that there is going to be a big fiery burning taking place across the entire planet. And surely those that are living a celestial and terrestrial lifestyle are not going to be burned, but the wicked are going to be burned. It feels like this is like a slight or an intentional kind of like foreshadowing of the future. Even though in here you didn't have Nebuchadnezzar burn in the fire in the furnace, like he wasn't put in the furnace, obviously. But in the last days, there would be a fire in a burning, but it would be of these very same worldly kingdoms and traditions that essentially prophetically began with Nebuchadnezzar himself. You see the poetry in that? Okay. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, in their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Ugh, well, sucks for them. Jeez. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and he said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Now that's a very interesting verse. And I would like to know what the Jews, like, how do they view this term right here? There's actually a way that we can find that out. Let's go to Sepharia. This, from what I can tell, this seems to be the most popular website in Judaism for, like, if you want to read the scriptures and then other Jewish texts. So we'll go to the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament. Okay, let's go down to, okay, it would be under Nevi'im, I think, which is the prophets. Right? No? Is it under the writings? Okay, so Daniel, they break up the Old Testament into the Torah, which is the first 5 books of Moses. There's the Nevi'im, which are the prophets. And then you have the writings, which are things like Psalms, Proverbs, whatever. But it looks like Daniel is included in that. Okay, so let's go to Daniel. We're on chapter 3. And then what verse was that? Verse 25. I'm going to do Control F, search for 4. We'll see how it reads in their translation. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and rising in haste addressed his companions, saying, Did we not throw 3 men bound into the fire? They spoke in reply, Surely, O king. He answered, But I see 4 men walking about unbound and unharmed in the fire, and the 4th looks like a divine being. I wish I was more versed in Hebrew than what I currently am. I've been learning it, but it's been kind of a while since I've picked it up. I wouldn't be able to say what these words are here. They say divine being. I wonder what it actually says in the actual Hebrew. I was able to in Genesis when it says, God created the heaven and earth. The word there, I was able to read it and recognize it. And the word was Elohim, which is gods, plural. And yet, on this website, Safaria, and then in uh, the Bibles, the King James Bible, it translated simply as God, singular. It's so messed up. It should translate it exactly what it says in the original Hebrew. It should say gods with an S. Anyway, okay, so whatever. So in the King James version, it says like the Son of God. I wonder if there's no, not that. Let's look at the footnotes and see if there's anything for that. Nope, there's not. I was because how sometimes it'll have in Hebrew this is for example, look at this Aramaic bagpipe. I guess that's what one of those instruments are. Bagpipe. Um, okay, well, whatever. So, okay. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth out of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Oh, by the way, if you want to have the smell of fire passed on you, this is not a promotion, by the way. There's this shampoo out there. Let's see, it's called the Grandpa Soap Company. They do a they do body soap and they also do shampoo. Oh, there's body wash. Honey, there's body wash. Holy crap. Can we get that? Okay, so right now all I have is just the shampoo, but they have this pine tar shampoo and body wash, and it smells just like a campfire. Um, it actually smells a little bit barbecuey, but mostly like a campfire. It is so good. It is so good. Um, the sense of smell is really powerful, and it can really affect your mood. It does for me anyway. Certain smells just hit me really strong, and I'm always happy when I take a shower and use Grandpa Soap Company shampoo, and hopefully in the near future, body wash as well. It smells so freaking good. Okay, so, but, they didn't smell like fire. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. I want to see what it says in Safaria for angel. Does it say angel as well? Okay. Yeah, it says his angel to save his servants. Okay. Uh, Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Now, remember how earlier we were talking about how Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they served their captors, right? It was their captors that destroyed the temple, for heaven's sake. They destroyed the temple. They took the vessels out and put it in their uh, um, polytheistic temples. You know, for all intents and purposes, a lot of people would not want to serve that people that had done such a horrible thing. But they did. They served. They were of service. They were kind. They turned the other cheek. But there is a certain line that you don't cross. You know, so they didn't actively fight against their captors, but when their captors wanted them to do something wrong, like eat the meat, which the text makes it seem like the meat was probably unkosher meat that would have ritually um, made them unclean. You like stick to your standards. You're as kind as possible, and you go along with the program. You're a good servant, but you stick to what is right. And I think there's people that just really struggle with that concept because they think in black and white terms. They haven't developed the ability to understand the shades of gray and where the line actually is. So there's some people that would be like, oh, no, like they get taken captive to Babylon and then they fight the whole time. And maybe they, organize groups and ambush the soldiers or do something like that, basically become zealots, have a zealot mentality. The zealots were Jews during the time of Christ that were not having it with the Romans. They would kill the Romans. They would kill Jews that went along with the Romans. And I think there's people in our church that are like that. They have that kind of mentality. Not that they would go as far as to like kill people, but they still have that mentality because they only think in black and white terms. They're not able to look at a situation like this and see the nuance and understand when uh just how to behave, how to act. It's a more advanced spiritual skill and understanding. It's something that all of us need to try and cultivate. So all right, now let's see what it says really quick in the Institute manual. There's not a whole lot in this chapter, but here we go. Verses 1 through 18. 3 Hebrews who were true to God in spite of threats and pressure. And by the way, the church is definitely under this right now, and look at how the church works and how it deals with worldly forces. It's the same. Surprise, it's the same. Daniel did not stand alone as an exemplary young man. His 3 companions demonstrated the same unswerving loyalty and devotion to God. Of them, Elder Spencer W. Kimball said, quote, "We remind ourselves of the integrity of the 3 Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." Again, I'm not sure why they're not using the Hebrew names, but okay. Who like Daniel, defied men and rulers to be true to themselves and to keep faith with their faith. They were required by decree of the emperor to kneel down and worship a monumental image of gold which the king had set up. In the face of losing caste, of losing position, of angering the king, they faced the fiery furnace rather than to fail and deny their God. The cunningly devised scheme worked as the vicious planners expected. The dedication must have been exciting with the people from far and near attending. Had there ever been such an image, such a spectacle? 90 feet of gold in the form of a man? What could be more scintillating, more sparkling? There must have been in there must have been almost countless people milling in the streets and in the area where the gigantic image stood when the herald announced the procedure and the decree that all must kneel at the sound of the music and almost worship the image. Neither the cunning of the deceivers, the conspiring, cunning tricksters, nor the fear of the king and what he could do to them dissuaded the 3 courageous young men from their true path of righteousness. When the prearranged sounds of the cornet, oh, here we go, the cornet, flute, harp, and other instruments reverberated through the area, and the masses of men and women everywhere filled their homes and the streets with kneeling worshippers of the huge golden image, 3 men refused to insult their true God. They prayed to God, and when confronted by the raging and furious emperor king, they courageously answered in the face of what could be certain death. End quote. That's from BYU. It was a BYU speech titled Integrity. Verses 19 to 23. The casting of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace. To heat the furnace, quote, 7 times more than it want to be, end quote, is presumed to be an idiomatic way of saying that the furnace was to be heated much hotter than usual, to be heated as hot as it could be heated. Quote, if the 3 were brought up to the furnace, it must have had a mouth above through which the victims could be cast into it. A mouth above. So like kind of like a pit. When heated to an ordinary degree, this could be done without danger to the men who perform this service. But in the present case, the heat of the fire was so great that the servants themselves perished by it. Which was it because like they had to like push them in, like they were struggling, and so in order to make sure that they actually went in, they had to like push them into it. Well, no, it said that they were bound, so I guess you had to like carry them there, and so maybe that's where the problem came in. They had to carry them alive, bound to the furnace, and therefore, as they got close, then they themselves died. All right. The king apparently viewed the events of the furnace through an opening at the bottom. Okay, so it's not really. It doesn't sound like it's really like this picture, although, thank you to whoever painted this. Or maybe it was kind of like this. Maybe there's an opening up here and they fall down. I don't know. Who the heck knows? No, this doesn't look like what we just read, but that's fine. It's still a great visual. All right. Let's go back. And that's it. And then it moves on to Daniel 4. So, yeah, this is a very applicable chapter to our own time from my point of view. You have these 3 through miraculous means they were saved from the fire, just like many will be on the earth at the time of the cleansing of the earth. All those that are celestial and terrestrial. The difference is that what happened with them right there is what we understand to be transfiguration, like a temporary state of having your body changed, which is different from being translated. So, for example, as we go into the millennium, you're going to be translated if you're worthy to move into the millennium, which means that for the rest of your life, you're going to be in this state. And from what I've been able to find, that includes the lack of disease and things like that. Interestingly, you're not going to have blood like we do now. I've done a video about this. It's not the point of this video to go through all the different things about that, but when you're transfigured, it's temporary. So, for example, what happened here, or Joseph Smith, when he was in the presence of God the Father and the Son, he was transfigured, and different things like that. So, anyway, I find it really interesting that you have this story that happens in this book that has a lot to do with the last days. It has a lot to do with the ultimate fate of the kingdoms of this world. The beast system, the worldliness, all the antichrists, the great and abominable church. This is the book that kind of foretells. It has a lot to do with the foretelling of what's going to happen, and it has a lot to do with fire. That's how everything's going to come to an end for the wicked. So it's really neat. It's really neat when you think about it, and this story actually makes a lot of sense to be in this particular book rather than elsewhere because of that theme. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.